Hey,
Spike, how you doing? Good to see you
I'm
again.
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be back.
Hi,
Yeah.
Spike. My name's Holly. It's a
Hi,
pleasure having
Holly.
you on.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to meet you.
Yeah.
Tonight's David will be played by a girl who is politically head trauma.
I thought maybe I had missed some big news from David. I didn't want to say anything, but
Muzzle
Surprise!
toss.
Mazel tov. Hey, you know what? Live how you want. But it's great to meet you.
It's great to meet you. We're excited. So, for anyone that doesn't know about you, and I know Jared has a history with you, but I do not, and I would love the elevator speech of who you are and what brings you to the show today.
Now's a good chance to make some stuff up. Just lead her off the tracks.
I was actually born with a master's degree. No. My name is Spike Cohen. I'm the founder and president of You Are the Power. We are an organization that finds people that are being abused by their local governments, and we fight until we win. We fight until we get them the justice and the respect that they should have gotten from day one. And in 2020, I was the Libertarian Party's candidate for vice president in the 2020 election.
Wow.
And I'm a general meme person and internet commenter and public speaker and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we first chatted when you were VP, but when you were VP candidate, chatted like 3 times then. But then you came on the one time when the veteran, his dog, his comfort dog,
the service dog,
was killed by the police, and you were down there. Where was that at? That was in Virginia?
That was in Gastonia, North Carolina.
Yeah,
He at the time was homeless. He now is in a home and has stable employment and all of that. But he had a PTSD service dog named Sunshine. He was wrongfully arrested and actually assaulted by police officers, one of whom was the son of the head of internal affairs for that department. Interestingly enough,
that sounds legit.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is all on body cam footage, everything I'm saying. So if it sounds like this might be weird or whatever, it's now been released. But anyway, they then tased the service dog. They said, "Oh, he bit me." She was a she, but regardless, they said, "Oh, he bit me." You can watch the video. No one got bitten. She literally was just standing by her owner, which is what she's supposed to do. And so they tased her. She ran away. She later died. Unfortunately died. They wrongfully arrested him. They tried to railroad him. They charged him with a bunch of things. And it turns out they had a history of doing this to homeless people and to poor people that they didn't like. And they thought they were going to get away with it. Then we found out about it. By the time we were done with it, the body cam footage was released. The public completely turned on the police department and the city council. One of the officers is no longer employed there. But then he was hired by the federal government. But that's a whole other subject.
There it is.
Yeah, there you go. And,
keeping incompetence employed.
Yeah, exactly. Violent incompetence and lying employed. We most importantly, all of his charges were dropped, and he's now in a much better situation now. He does have another service dog now named Justice. And his name's Joshua Rohr, and he's doing well as well. And that's one of the many examples of the kinds of cases we take on.
Good.
Are you a lawyer?
No, I barely made it out of high school.
So you're just an advocate that doesn't shut up, and you
Yes.
basically burrow in and make sure you're a thorn on the right people's backside.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I wasn't actually all that politically involved, at least not vocally or publicly, until about 6 years ago or so. Before that, I was in the startup business, serial entrepreneurial world. That's where I come from. And then in 2016, I was diagnosed with MS. And that kind of made me rethink my priorities and remember that life is a fleeting thing, and that I was in a financial position to not worry about constantly chasing money. And so I'm chasing freedom and liberty and justice.
How are you with that diagnosis? Have you had any setbacks, or are you doing well?
So when I first was diagnosed with it, it was extremely aggressive. I was having a relapse every 2 to 3 months. We were talking about how much longer I'd be able to walk for. But since I got on a really good treatment, and I also changed, I have this entire crazy, I actually made a 30-minute video talking about all the things, lifestyle changes I made to be able to beat MS. And all of that combined, I've now been in remission and stable for going on 7 years now.
That's a miracle and amazing.
Outstanding.
My aunt passed away from MS, but this was in 93. And it was so different.
Changed, yeah.
So much has changed. And to see people with the diagnosis and actually thriving it's a beautiful thing. So
Yeah,
I'm really happy for you, because
thank you.
that'll definitely stop you right in your tracks and make you reevaluate.
I actually had my infusion earlier. I don't think you can see it, but I had my infusion earlier today. I get it once a month, and between that and all my changes to diet and exercise, I take like 24 supplements and all this other stuff. I'm in the best shape of my life.
And so food is medicine, and it's actually really great medicine for the machine, which is your body, who's basically turned on you, and you've found a way to get it back on track. That's phenomenal. That's exciting. We could do a whole show based just on that.
I've done shows based on that. Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, on our network, there's a health and wellness ladies group. On it, watching in the sidelines is Dwayne, and he's our
producer,
IT magician, whatever. And I know you want to get some publicity out for what we're going to talk about in a minute, this exciting event you got coming up. But I would like to connect you with Dwayne so that because you have a great message.
Oh yeah.
Now, honestly, I just got asked this: are you still in touch with Vermin?
Oh, Vermin Supreme?
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, I was supposed to get together with him in last month? I was supposed to get together with him last month. He was doing he's on a perpetual run for president.
Oh yeah.
And
he's one of my personal favorite human beings.
Is he the Libertarian candidate for president?
No. No, he ran for the nomination in 2020, but he has run for president actually, I think he usually camps out in New Hampshire, but he's based in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And he wears a boot on his head.
Yeah, he wears a boot and a great big
Vermin Supreme.
His name is Vermin, and that is his legal name, is Vermin Love Supreme.
And ponies for everyone.
Ponies for everyone. Everyone.
He's one of my favorite human beings.
Yeah.
He's
a great guy.
He is Vermin Supreme. He's a actor, but he does it to get a message across of peace and nonviolence and all this. And I think he's fantastic. And I like how he's not afraid to get in front of a camera and act crazy, but have a good message dropped in there, because that acting crazy drops that message in your head.
You're not afraid to get in front of a camera. I mean,
yeah, but I don't.
Some people just aren't afraid.
He's so much cooler than I'll ever be.
You go from I'm not really into politics to being on a vice presidential ticket for the Libertarian Party. Yes. I want to know how that happened.
So it's called having an addictive personality. So
I
have learned that I don't do anything in moderation. I either go whole hog into something or I just don't do it. And so, for example, I was a drug addict for many years, from 13 to about the age of just before I turned 24. I was a severe drug addict. You name it, I did it. I like to joke that even back then I wouldn't touch Bud Light, so I don't know why we even had to have a boycott, but that's a whole other subject.
Sounds like him.
But in 2006 I got clean. I've been clean ever since, going on 18 years.
That's amazing too. That's a miracle too, because absolutely. I have family that suffers with addiction, and I'm telling you, you can't just skip over that part. That is a huge deal to get clean.
It was, and again, my brain's wired differently. So once I decided I'm going to now not do that anymore, I think it was easier than it is for most people, because I just have a very weird brain like that.
You got addicted to something else.
I got it. Well, I got addicted to not doing drugs, basically. And I've been addicted. I was addicted to success. I had started a business when I was 16 that turned into a full-on, multi-decade career. And then when I was diagnosed, I decided I'm I'm going to focus. I like to joke and say I thought I might dabble in politics, but I really thought, I have these strong opinions about how things need to be changed. I've been a libertarian for quite some time, and so I started with just kind of a podcast, and I'd have some of my friends on and we talk about stuff, and all of a sudden I started getting guests on that were like not just my friends, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually I was asked to run for the VP nomination, and I thought, okay, well, I'm happy to go in and talk about what I think we could be doing differently and use a VP nomination run for that, but they'll pick someone else. And then they picked me. And so I said, okay, well, I guess I'm doing this then. And I did as well as I could. I went across the country, almost 40 states we went to in that campaign. And ever since then, I've just been hitting the ground running. During that campaign, I met people in the liberty movement, in the party and outside of the party, who were frustrated that we really only got together every 2 to 4 years for these campaigns, but we weren't doing much else to keep people engaged in spreading liberty. We would show up to run for Congress or city council or president or whatever, but we weren't like doing something on a regular basis.
Something to build your group and to maybe ensure a win, where you're not just running to be the third person, but you're running to win and to keep the message among people. Like Republicans, I mean, we have to have meetings all the time.
Right.
We don't just stop and then be a Republican in 4 years.
Right. And not just for the party, but for what libertarianism even means. Because that's the other problem is people go, where have you been? And what does that even mean? So many people go, do you mean like liberal? And we're like, no. This. And so it's like the brand of libertarianism, and getting people to want to be libertarian, even if they vote Republican or Democrat, who still want those things no matter who they're voting for. And then I also during the campaign, I met people who were being destroyed by their local governments and having their lives ruined, their families torn apart, their businesses stolen, their homes stolen, all sorts of
children stolen.
Their children,
which is another thing. You were down in, was it Texas 3 or 4 months ago, helping a family out that had their child taken, right?
We have a cause we're working on in Texas.
Where was that at?
I was actually in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia for this one. And in fact, right now, I just, right before I came on here, I posted a video. We're going straight to Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, and saying, it's called the Division of Family and Children's Services, but their CPS, their Children's Services, has been incentivized to create a system of child trafficking where they are being given money if they call every case that's put in front of them abuse, even when it's clearly not and the medical records show it isn't. And if they don't do that, they face being fired. So they'll be punished if they do the right thing, and they're given federal and state money if they do the wrong thing. And so we're calling for him to meet with us and to, these are some of those families, the Tims, the Hernandez, Jocelyn and Josiah Sanders are in Texas, but it's the same thing. She went with her son, was prescribed her son was prescribed clindamycin for a minor infection. She looked up clindamycin and said that seems like way too much. She went and got a second opinion that same day. Her son Josiah was prescribed Bactrim. He was doing fine. The next morning, because she got a second opinion, her son was taken from her. This was back in December. Her son was taken from her without a court order, and she's still fighting to get him back, even though in court, both the state's pediatrician and her pediatrician said the same thing, that she had done nothing wrong and that he would have gotten better under her care. He almost died under their care, under their custody, because they were giving him clindamycin. He needed a PICC line and a breathing tube because he was dying. And thankfully, they took him off of it. And, this is the kind of stuff that happens when government is out of control. So I would meet people on the campaign trail like this who needed help. They needed someone to spotlight what was going on and to help them get justice and to help this nightmare end for them. And then I saw these other people who said, man, if only there was something we could work on, on the off campaign years and year round and 24/7, 365 to show people what liberty is and to try to spread the message. And I said, well, here it is. Let's combine these two people. And so starting in 2021, we, as a proof of concept, we took on a few test causes to see, could this work? And it worked beautifully. We had a more than 70% success rate on those causes. In 2022, we officially launched the 501, our nonprofit charity, or our charity. It's qualified as a charity, but we launched our nonprofit, You Are the Power. And we have since had a nearly 90% or roughly 90% success rate on our case.
How do you get donations? Where do people go to donate to your cause?
If you go to youarethepower.net, there's a donate button there.
Excellent.
You can also become a member. And as much as I would love to get as much resources and money as people can give us, every bit that we can get is that many more causes we can work on. We'd also like you to become a member, and we do have a free membership option. Being a member gets you access to our membership network. You find out before anyone else about our causes and the calls to action on what you can do. You have access to our members-only training on how to become a better liberty activist and a better speaker and advocate for liberty. You get access to our monthly newsletter for the happenings of what's going on with You Are the Power. And if you do the paid memberships, you get that same access to the membership, and you also get some cool swag that comes with it. And you also have the knowledge that you're helping to give the resources that You Are the Power needs to properly discover these causes, thoroughly vet them to make sure they're legit, come up with a plan of action, and organize our community of activists and the local community in that area.
So you get to create like a local chapter or something when, let's say you don't have anyone in this small town of Tooele County. So you become a member, you see something, they contact you, and then help you kind of figure out the next plan of attack. Do you want to know, it was just recently that I watched a show on Netflix that's called Take Care of Maya. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
Where the hospital and DCFS literally kidnapped this young girl and accused her parents of doctor shopping because a doctor in Mexico gave her the drug GHB or whatever to help her with these terrible spasms. And some bureaucrat decides that that's too much medicine, and they kept her hostage in a hospital, wouldn't let the mother visit. The mother ends up committing suicide because she feels so broken, and they're bankrupt trying to fight this in court. And they eventually get her back, but without her mom. And the doctor who prescribed her and took her to Mexico is literally telling a judge, this worked for her. I am her care physician. And was it Johns Hopkins that they had her?
It was Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
It makes you terrified to take your child, because then they said, we started this story, this documentary for this plan to go through, and we just put it out there to people to let them know if this has ever happened to them. And they expected to get maybe 50 from one of the states. There were hundreds and hundreds of people going through this throughout the United States. I wouldn't even know who to call.
We've discovered dozens of families just in Georgia. And the problem is the root of the problem. It can be handled at the state level with some serious reforms that are necessary. And it's not just replacing this figurehead with this figurehead. Like, structural changes need to be made in disincentivizing, providing incentives to make the right decision instead of just calling it abuse to get that federal money. But that federal money is the real problem. Under Title 4 of the Title 4D, I believe, of the Social Security Act, every time they call it abuse, they get a certain amount of money. Not just their department, but them personally get a certain amount of money. Every time the judge orders non-reunification and orders them placed for adoption, they get even more money. And if those kids are disabled or have any kind of chronic health condition, they get way more money. And so here's what happens. When you come in with a kid that has a swelling or bruising or as a result of a chronic health condition, a good person, a good doctor who's not being incentivized to lie would look at that and go, oh, wow, they have this chronic health condition. It causes this. Let's look at the treatment. But these so-called child abuse pediatricians and these caseworkers go, wow, kid with fractures and bruising, and it's disabled. I'm going to get so much money from calling this abuse. And so they do everything they can. I mean, with the stories we have, the things we've heard, and these are all verified things. We fully vet our stories. We have the medical records, we have the emails, we have the case study, we have like the actual case from the caseworkers, we have the minutes from the family court hearings. We have everything. And
this is going to be
happen is infuriating.
This is going to be something that comes out, and I know I can't mention it because we got in trouble. So this one thing that happened in 2020 to the world, so many hospitals were incentivized for exactly that. Put them on a respirator, and you'll make money. If this is on the death certificate, you'll make money. And when the government builds it, it will come.
Is it too easy?
It doesn't matter what it is. If the government puts a price tag on it, they're going to get all kinds.
Is it too early for me to say it?
Yeah, we don't want to get Dwayne any heart
No,
failure.
is it too early for me to say the G word?
Oh, no. In fact, I think you should get earlier and earlier.
We need to bust out the guillotines. It's time. We need to make a how to build video. I want to see, I don't know if anyone, I'm a veteran, but in the Army, they gave out these little magazines.
Guillotines and catapults.
Weekly magazines, weekly PMCS how-tos. And they'd be like, this week we got the Humvee, the Prick 77, different things like that. And I think they need to have one of those for the guillotine, because we need to really switch up our government, because our government has become predatory, parasitic, and abusive.
It has. And the problem is, it's not the officials. It's not that it's this person instead of this person. It's that they've created an incentive structure that just about every person that goes into it is going to go, oh, I get money to do this. Okay, I'll do this. And if they don't, they get fired. They get replaced. So one of the complaints we heard was, well, these children's services are doing the best they can because they have people quitting left and right. Well, then we started having some of those former caseworkers come to us and say why they were quitting left and right. They were being told flat out, if you call something that involves a fracture anything but abuse, you're fired. Yeah. Even if there's medical evidence that fracture or that bruising or that whatever is not being caused by trauma, by physical trauma, by abuse, it's being caused by a chronic health condition. You are to ignore that. You are to deny the parents access to the medical records and make them fight for it in court. And you're going to hope that they're like the vast majority of people who don't have the tens of thousands of dollars that it costs to fight this in the court system.
It's their
both
child.
The criminal court system and in the family court system. And to add insult to injury, or add additional injury to injury, many of these people, in order to get bail to be allowed to go home as a condition of their bond, they are indefinitely estranged from their spouse. Yeah. They cannot live with or speak with their spouse. And what they do is they hold, because they don't have any evidence to go to trial, they'll arrest them, but they never officially indict them. But they got that bond condition over them indefinitely.
And there's a protective
even after
order.
Their kids have been stolen from them. So
they're
not
protective
only are they
order
having
against their child and their family. So they're outcast from their entire family.
They're estranged from their entire family. And
what
they hope is that it will just break them. That they'll say, okay, fine, what do I plead to? Let me at least have my wife back. Let me at least have my husband back. I guess you're going to take my children. Is it possible for me to occasionally have,
phone calls?
Phone calls or, monthly visits or something. And it breaks them.
Oh,
and they keep it to themselves because they just pled guilty to abuse, and they don't want the stigma of people going, they probably did do it. I mean, why would they charge them if they didn't do it?
Exactly.
That's the nightmare they're being put through.
What? The government charged people with innocent stuff? No.
And Dwayne says this is how Marxism works: divide husbands and wives, children and parents. And that's so true. But if you guys haven't seen this Netflix special, it made me so angry. I was seething, because who the hell are these people to... I get it. There's a need for DCFS, that there are really abused kids out there. But I've watched plenty of episodes of different shows where kids were blatantly abused. Teachers reported it. Everybody reported it. They did nothing. But here they see a cash cow, because at the end of the day, this young girl who they said didn't have this disease, her doctor said she had it, but Johns Hopkins pediatrician said she didn't have it. And yet at the end of the day, they were billing this girl's insurance company for this disease treatment. It was such a scam. And this woman, who was the mother of this girl and a Russian immigrant who fought and fought and fought, she eventually gave up. Like you said, they drive you to break you. It's called Take Care of Maya, and it's on Netflix. Hi, Mom, my mother, I love you.
Let me ask you a question.
Just, real quick.
Oh, yeah.
So on the Take Care of Maya thing, I was actually on Dr. Joe Corcoran's show earlier this week. He was the one of the expert witnesses in the Take Care of Maya trial, Dr. Joe Corcoran. And he talked about this, and he's now a member of You Are the Power. He wants to pay it forward and help. And being on that show, we got about I think we're up to 50 new members. His advocates, his people that are a part of his show, have said, they want to make sure proactively that something like a Maya Kowalski never happens again.
Did the family? I know it kind of ends in that documentary where the family was suing. She was home, and the attorneys, did the attorneys do it for free in that case?
I don't know if they did it for free or not, but I do know that they were recently awarded $213 million.
Right, because they were suing, and they didn't.
The attorneys were, or the family?
The family, but the attorney will get a percentage.
Yeah,
but
I assume the attorneys get like a contingency percentage. Yeah.
Well, and that would be fair because they worked on it for years, and they couldn't believe
who did they get the money from? Who did they sue that was awarded? Was it the state or was it Johns Hopkins?
I
believe it was both the state and Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. That I'm not positive of, but I know Johns Hopkins was definitely on one of the defendants in that.
How would it be that the people, if a lawsuit came down in your city, that anyone involved, from the police officers, the social worker, all of them, the city or your state was allowed to turn around and say, okay, now you're a part of this too. So we get to withhold 30% of your paycheck until you meet this percentage liability. Needs to happen.
Hey, a $200+ million lawsuit. I know a lot of families would go, even me, where's the money come from? It comes from taxpayers, right? When it's the government. But a lawsuit like that opens eyes, and it puts departments in check because they cannot write many checks like that.
It does, but the reason that they aren't being held individually liable is because of qualified immunity. We talk about that a lot for police officers, but it also applies to any kind of government worker, except
prosecutors.
Prosecutors, judges, and politicians are covered under absolute immunity. You don't even get to take it to court. They are immune, period. Qualified immunity is where the government officials, government employees, get to go to the court and go, Your Honor, I didn't know it was illegal to steal children. And the courts usually say, that's fine. And that's how qualified immunity works. And as a result of that, there is no disincentive to do the wrong thing. They don't even have to worry about getting sued. And so now the taxpayer has to pay it off. So everyone's being victimized, and the only people who are actually responsible are also the only people who are never held accountable for it.
It's true. And that's bureaucrats in our government. And they have, you can't fire them. They get reassigned to other jobs in other divisions, and yet they have trafficked your child.
And they get endless streams of federal monopoly money
that
to incentivize doing it. And that's the problem. Yeah. As a libertarian, all things go back to the Federal Reserve, but this is a perfect example of that. When the federal government can just throw endless trillions of monopoly money at everything and never actually look at the system and figure out what works and what doesn't, just throw more money at it, inevitably what ends up happening is you incentivize a system that just looks for metrics. I'm going to call everything abuse, but then here's what happens. If your job is to just say abuse, you're not going to find the actual cases of abuse because the actual abusers know how to work the system. They know how to beat their kids in such a way that it's not going to show, you hear about like hitting kids with phone books and stuff like that so they don't bruise and like these horrific things that happen. So unless the person who's abusing them is also stupid and does something that makes obvious, an obvious evidence of abuse, they never get found because these caseworkers aren't actually investigating. They're just, fracture, abuse, bruising, abuse, even though they know. And when they see fracture because of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or because of osteogenesis imperfecta or because of neonatal rickets, they don't go, okay, it's not abuse. They go, oh, that's even more money because they're disabled. Abuse.
Well, and good parents, abusive parents don't normally take their child to an ER after they've hurt them, unless it's like life-threatening. Yep. And these good parents who've got a child with a disability, they're going to the ER because they need help. They're not. This is this is a clown world. We're probably going to say this more than once today because it's absolutely ridiculous of what's happening in our country right now.
Be careful. You're going to convince Holly to come over to our side.
Hey, I'm going to tell you the truth. Before, this is no kidding, when I first moved to Tooele County 20 plus years ago, I was a libertarian. And I said, you know, if they were more organized, I would be a part of that party. Not only that, I would run and be a chair of that party.
She's the county chair for the Republicans out here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would run and I would be in libertarians because I believe that if you're not hurting me, live your life.
Right.
But I think there's so much discipline required with the Libertarian Party, and there is so much, well, it's liberty. And people aren't very responsible with liberty. We live in a country where people will give it up in the name of security or political theater or security theater. And
watch it every day. Yep.
Yeah. And yet, you know, I don't know that the public is ready for true liberty, because there is a fine line. I think Dwayne mentioned it, between libertarian and anarchy, and where they say, look, you know, the government, in my opinion, should do what the government is given the right to do in the Constitution. And only that. These taxes they've come up with are just ridiculous. We never own our property. Never. The government owns it. And yet, when do we get enough people to wake up and say, enough, I'm done with this. The government can't charge me property tax. I'll pay a tax, but this tax me from the second I'm born to the second I'm in the ground it's theft.
Well,
the fact that they can take my money out of my car because I'm carrying cash on me, now that's a problem. They can take my home. Yeah, they can take my home because they feel like I've committed a crime out of it. There is so much that's been handed over in the name of security that we've lost our liberty. And I don't even know if our public could even handle what liberty really would mean.
Well,
I think the problem. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, man.
No, you go, Spike.
So I think part of the problem with this is that a lot of the public, and we saw this with COVID, they like a certain amount of freedom, especially the things they like to do. But then anything past that, they've been conditioned to believe that anything past that can actually be harmful, that there's like this sort of Laffer curve to freedom, that you want to get there just enough of freedom. And then after that, as things start to go downhill, it gets really bad, you know, but the reality is what actually freedom is good in all cases, and liberty is good in all ways. And the more liberty you have, the better things are. And more to the point, the more we require that everyone respect everyone else as individual human beings, the happier, the more prosperous, and the more harmonious we are. Like, and that's something we intrinsically understand. Like, if we were going around treating each other the same way we treat insects or you know, livestock or something like that, things would not be very good. But yet we put that expectation for being respected as an individual human being aside when it's the government. Yeah. The government routinely does things to us individually and as a people that we would never tolerate anyone else doing because they're the government, even though literally those people are just our neighbors. Like they're literally, especially at the local level, they might live in the same subdivision as you or the same neighborhood as you. Like they're literally the same people. And if outside of their capacity as government officials, they were doing those exact same things, we would band together to stop them. But because they're standing behind the dais and they're wearing their suit and they've got their official title and there's someone standing next to them with a shiny badge, and we go, oh, well, that's the government, you know, maybe we can vote them out or whatever. What we're doing with You Are the Power is right now the first thing that we do is we find people who are being disrespected by government. They're being mistreated because the government's not treating them as human beings. They're treating them as a metric. And so we get that story out to the public as what?
They're like a collective. We're not individual spirits. We are a collective. We are ants on a hill, worker ants. That's supposed to work for the government instead of it being the other way around.
Exactly. And so we bring those cases to people's attention and we encourage them to join us and to fight for the respect that we all deserve. And then we give them another cause and another one and another one and another one. So we're conditioning them to not just complain and go, oh, this sucks, I hate this, man, the government, those politicians, man, they just do whatever they want. Here's something you can do. And look at how we're winning. Look at the successes we've had. But all along the way, we keep the consistent message. This is happening because you're not being respected as an individual human being. We are always doing better when we are respected and when we respect each other as individual human beings. That is the core message of libertarian. I call it the principle of human respect, but it's basically the core message of libertarianism. It is the non-aggression principle and property rights and individualism and non-aggression and all of our different self-ownership, all of our different ideas are boiled down to the same thing. When we are treated and when we treat one another as individual human beings, we are better off in every way, measurable and immeasurable. And when we are not respected as individual human beings, no matter who's doing the disrespecting, we are that much worse off.
Okay, so I want to talk about, just one set of people I'm thinking about right now is parents and the school boards across this nation, and how you individual human beings, I get so angry if my child is disrespected, like their voice doesn't matter. They're sitting in a class and they disagree with what the teacher is saying, and they're being very respectful, but they're talked down to. He's 14, so he's not a little kid, but his individual spirit should be recognized, and he should get respect, especially if he's having a conversation that's intellectually on the same page or questioning with boldness, which I think every American should do, and we should raise our children to do that. But now we've got these school boards who aren't even, parents are standing alone and they're standing up for right, but when they can't even read a book that's in their child's library without being their mic shut off, or the meeting can't have these words, but you're going to throw it in front of my child. I bet you have tons of parents who feel unheard, disrespected, and they're on behalf of their children.
Well, and we found out in, was it 21 or 22, that the federal government was using the Patriot Act, the provisions within the Patriot Act, to spy on and try to basically find dirt on some of these parents, some of these most outspoken parents that were showing up to school board meetings.
They were called domestic terrorists.
Yeah, they were called domestic terror, and there was never any documented threat of violence. There was never any documented true unrest. They said, "Oh, fomenting unrest." No, it was a very heated discussion happening at a school board meeting. There were people yelling. It wasn't, unrest like the city might fall to the rioters.
A child had just been raped in her school by a transgender kid who was shut. It was under the rug, moved to a different school, and it happened in a different school. And I'm telling you, take my child and buy hostage through a hospital. You're going to see mama bears and papa bears come out. That is your child. You have to fight back. And then you're looking at a board of people who aren't considering your child as an individual spirit, or the future that is getting wrecked because you're making these ridiculous decisions. There's no face when you're viewing things as a collective. There's no heart. There's no story. When you're an individual, you matter more. You're absolutely right. And I believe in God, and I believe he chooses our spirit. He knows our spirit. He knew us in the womb. He knows who we are. And every single one of us is here for a purpose in this time. And we are valuable. Yep.
And those government officials, those school officials, like you said, if they were looking at these rape victims, these children, as individual human beings instead of some political boundary or political obstacle they got to get around, they wouldn't have done that. And also to the point, if it had been anyone other than a government official who was saying, this person raped this person, I'm going to hide it and put them over here so they can rape somewhere else where I don't have to deal with it, we would be punishing them for that too, for aiding and abetting the rapist. But because they're school officials, they more than likely can't be sued. They'll almost certainly get qualified immunity for it if they were even to be sued. And they sick the government on people who even just show up and express their displeasure with the fact that it happened.
They're insulated through having other people carry out their orders.
The Vatican did that, remember, with priests. And it took a class action lawsuit, a substantial one, before they brought it to light. And yet that was a huge entity. Why should the government be any different? We have to stand up, and we have to. But when the DOJ goes after you and they're using the DOJ as a weapon against American citizens who are standing up for their child, standing up for themselves, the squeaky wheel gets all the attention.
Yeah, well, we're seeing this with the January 6th protesters. And to be clear,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about any of the ones that actually engaged in violence or actually assaulted
No,
anyone.
we
I'm talking about
understand.
the people whose highest crime was walking into a building and then leaving, which was the vast majority, including some of whom who were journalists. They were literally
building
just
that's
covering the news
open.
story.
The People's House.
A building that's open every other day as well.
That's supposed to be,
just
yeah,
on
exactly.
the grounds. Some were just on the grounds of that building.
Well,
And,
they're
and
under
many
the
of
jail.
them were literally they were walking around outside of the building.
Yep.
That's the vast majority of the people.
Yeah.
And they're being subject for misdemeanor charges. They have the FBI forcing them to do perp walks. They're getting no-knock rated by SWAT teams. This is for misdemeanor crimes.
solitary confinement.
It's involuntary confinement. They're being subjected. They're being punished at not just at the highest level that you can for that misdemeanor. They're being put in medium security federal prisons, which have never before hosted anyone that had a misdemeanor, because they don't charge them with that for a misdemeanor.
They don't charge
And
them.
the prisons also seem to have they're selecting prisons that carry political bias so that the abuse tends to be carried on in the prison.
Yeah.
Here in the stories, what's
torture.
coming out, it seems like the officers at the prison hold a grudge against them. David says, hi, David. You remember David, the guy that used to sit here and,
Yes.
Let Jared do all the
David
talking.
got prettier and now David's changed. Anyways, he says it's harder for little boys in school, I think. Maybe I'm just crazy or biased though.
No, I think you're right, David, because I think it's designed that way. When boys' brains think differently and they're not as, I don't believe they don't comply like girls will. They'll get along to get that good grade. And when a boy, I know this, boys will be slower to learn to read or write, and then they're scared to write because the teacher will grade a boy differently because he's comparing it to a girl, when our brains are literally different in how we tell a short story.
Not just our brains, our physical bodies. A boy wants to run and move, and schools are now.
Whoa.
That is.
Whoa. I don't like this kind of talk. You're saying boys are in some way physically different than girls.
Oh, I stand corrected.
Can you even tell me what a boy is? You phobic.
And then
it's your show, so I can't cancel you on your own show, but I am canceling you on your own show.
David also says maybe the government can sue itself. But it'll just say it did nothing wrong.
It can't do that either. It's called sovereign immunity.
Yeah.
Sovereign, and that means you can't sue a government entity.
The government can't sue the government.
It's almost like it's designed
so
to
you can sue
fail.
the government in court to do or not do something, but in terms of punitive damages or anything, absolutely not. You cannot sue.
And the government can tax the government. They can tax the Social Security. Yeah, we're going to hand you taxpayer dollars, and then we're going to tax you for them. So you're going to hand them back. This is a clown world. This is a guillotine world.
Well, my favorite here in Utah, when we do our taxes, we have to claim last year's federal returns on this year's state taxes.
What?
You didn't know that?
I didn't have to do that.
In Utah, you have to do that.
Don't say live that you didn't do that.
No, you do that.
H&R Block did mine.
It's written right.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, then, yeah, you're good.
Yeah, you have to do that.
Shout out to Roger at H&R Block.
But no, I want to ask you a question going back to the state
you
kidnapping.
Breeze over that. They say that you have to claim.
It's in there. It's in there. Do your own taxes one time. It's right there.
It's income, but it's money they took out.
Look,
no, they didn't. Yeah, no, it's income. Yeah,
it's the state of Utah. But I wanted to ask you on going back to the government-sponsored child kidnapping. Does it seem like there's a window where the government kidnaps? Do you like super rich people? They're like, we're not touching that because we'll get our butts handed to us in court. Or is there and then super poor, they can't milk them for anything, so that's just not going to happen.
So they
So
don't
is there
have
like a
to,
window?
yeah, so it's basically the window is they'll do it to everyone, and if you're wealthy enough, you can fight it and get your kids back. But if you're poor, you can't. And they're not, to be clear, they're not milking those. Now, if they can, they'll try to get those families to pay child support when they take their kids from them, so that they pay child support to the state to take care of kids that were stolen from them.
Or they
But if
bill
they don't
their
have to,
insurance if they have it.
yeah, and that as well. But that's not their main source of funding. Their main source of funding is federal Title IV money and going to the state and saying, we need more appropriations for the next year's budget. Look at all these abuse cases of chronically ill children we've had to take on. So they really they actually prefer to go after, they prefer when the kids are of poor parents, because the poor parents aren't going to be able to fight back. And so yeah, there's not much they need to milk from the parents. They're milking the most important thing from the parents, and that's their kids.
So the wealthy parents become poor parents really fast.
That can happen as well, depending on how wealthy they are. They might be poor when it's over, but at least their family's still together. It is I mean, this is the most, it's almost surreal talking about it. And I deal with how much the government sucks every single day. And yet I was surprised when we first heard about this first cause, and it was the Hernandez family. Actually, we dealt with a similar case with a couple named Rodney and Tamisha Jackson in Dallas, I think last year, early last year, maybe it was 22. And I thought that was just like a one-off thing. Then we heard this story of the Hernandez family and what they were going through. And I told my team, we need to vet this thoroughly, because this seems off. Like, I think the government sucks as much as the next guy, but
that seemed too crazy.
Chronically ill kids and holding charges, and they don't. And I said, let's vet it and see if it is. And they had all the evidence. They had the medical records. They had the testing. They had their, emails back and forth attempting to get the records. They had, they had everything. They had the hearing where the family court judge literally refused to listen to the testimony or evidence of the medical experts that were brought in by the parents, by one of the parents, because they're not allowed to talk to each other.
Or sometimes the victim, the child, they wouldn't even listen to Maya in her case.
Yeah. So do you think they do that just so it doesn't get on the court record, that they refuse to have that testimony, so there's not a record of the
no, that's exactly what it is. But now what still gets on the record is that someone tried to introduce it and they said no. And so you get this information and they literally say, I'm not going to hear this. And they'll appeal it and they'll say appeal denied. And so this judge instead took the sole testimony of the child abuse physician, who brought no paperwork, who seemed not to necessarily remember the facts of this specific case of Emma Hernandez, who did not know what osteogenesis imperfecta was, which is what she almost certainly has. And he said, yeah, well, it's abuse, because anytime you see these kinds of fractures, it's statistically, it's likely to be abuse. And when the lawyer asked him for the source of that statistic, he said, oh, you can look it up on the internet. She took that testimony instead of the documented medical records and medical expert testimony that said that she had a disease and was not being abused. So when we see these things, when I say we thoroughly vet these, we have a team that spends hours and hours and hours poring over all of this stuff and trying to stay sane while reading these things.
This is insanity. This is absolute insanity. And these are people's children. I cannot imagine a bigger fight that I would be in when it's my child. I cannot imagine.
I tell people, if you have children who have a chronic health condition and you take them to a children's hospital, make sure you have a legal team in place. And I'm not being hyperbolic.
Go in there with lawyers.
Do you even take them to a children's hospital?
They're actually disincentivizing people. They are disincentivizing people from taking their kids to children's hospitors.
Oh yeah.
It is that bad. Yeah. Showa is one of the worst ones in Atlanta.
This is insane world. And O'Malley May just joined us, and she says, hi everyone. And she says, no burden of proof required when it's in a civil matter, and primary children's is infamous, and seen it happen to one of my friends, and it was so horrible.
It's horrific.
The story you had with the child that was taken by Georgia, and they put it on the heavier antibiotic. I read that, and it almost killed the child.
That one was in Texas. So 3
In
of them are
Texas.
Georgia. That one's in
Okay.
Texas. But yeah, they put them on the clindamycin. Yeah.
Is that common? You see that happen where the state takes the child as this source of revenue, and then they give it subpar care? Because the foster system is sometimes it's good, but it has a reputation
So
for
much room for abuse,
for a lot of horrible things happening in it. A lot of abuses
financial,
and
mental, sexual.
Yep. And what happens is the good parents, they see. So, for example, the Hernandez family, their case was brought to us by Jennifer and Jonathan Williams. They were one of the foster families for Emma and Aria Hernandez, and they said something's wrong here. These kids just. Aria, who's old enough to talk, just keeps saying that she wants her parents, and she's becoming more and more withdrawn. And the other one, Emma, the one that was supposedly abused, something's off. She looks on. She was still a young baby, but her head to body proportion looks wrong. She doesn't look like I forget exactly the different things, but they were like, something's wrong here. Like, she looks like she's unwell.
She's not developing properly.
She's not developing properly because she more than likely has osteogenesis imperfecta. And so when she brought this to DFACS and the family court, when she brought this to their attention, she kept driving home. She kept driving it home. She kept driving it home. And eventually they said, we don't think you're a good candidate for our foster parent system.
which she was the only good candidate.
She was the only one. Yeah, she was the
Aside
only one
from
up
the
there that we knew
child's
of.
mother.
So when I build a guillotine, I like to use a hardwood for the upright stand. I'm thinking oak.
Right.
Now, if you want some color in there, you could go with the cherry, a nice grain cherry,
Okay.
and then you stain it.
Settle down.
You get a nice shiny stain. Now,
Spike,
for the crossbar,
okay, so you feel like what you're doing is potentially empowering other people. How do you fundraise? Do you do events, or do you just you go to these cases? Like, how are you getting attention for this? Because I, as a parent, after seeing that show on Netflix, I was so angry, but I thought, how would somebody know there's people out there like you who are ready to go to war for them?
Yeah. So our primary source of getting the news out is through our social media, through our advocacy our activist network of members. So you can be a part of that as well. And from our growing media contacts, local, regional, state, national, international media, podcasts like this. And that's primarily how we get our news out. We do events, but they're typically cause-oriented events. So they aren't events to raise funds necessarily. Every once in a while, I'll do like an open house in a state or something and try to raise funds. But for the most part, our events are front-facing cause-related events, rallies in front of Capitol buildings and city council meetings and things like that. Like, that's typically how we do those. Our main source of funding is from everyday folks like you. It is from people who say, I want to help to help reunite families, stop small businesses from being stolen, stop people's homes from being stolen, stop people from being wrongfully arrested and having the body cam footage not released, stop people from being threatened for feeding people, being threatened with jail time for feeding people. Stop out of control governments from refusing to respect people as individuals. I want to help with that, and they can do so by going to youarethepower.net. They can make a one-time donation, or they can become a paid member, which is like a recurring thing, and it's a different prices based on which one they choose. And every penny we get goes to the cost of discovering these causes, vetting these causes, organizing around these causes, rallying around these causes, and not stopping fighting until we win on it. I can give you an example of how we win. We got involved with Rodney and Tamisha Jackson after months of baby Mila, a newborn child who was taken from them because their pediatrician or OBGYN didn't like the fact, or no, I think it was the pediatrician, didn't like the fact that they did a home birth with a midwife instead of bringing her into the hospital. She, after months of fighting, they got her back. In the case of the Hernandez family, that judge who refused to listen to any of the evidence, after getting several thousand emails from folks after we released the Hernandez family story, at their next hearing, she inexplicably did a 180 degree and said, I am ordering reunification. I would drop everything and just let them live with you again. But unfortunately, my hands are tied because you still have an active criminal complaint against you, an active criminal case against you. So I can't do that. But I'm removing everything that I possibly can. These children can now live with family members, and there are no restrictions. You can see them whenever you want to.
So was that an election year? Because this is something people need to remember. Judges, they're elected too. And I've seen prosecutors, I've seen judges where they've held a case. They don't have crap on this person, but they use it during an election year either to get votes, or they'll dismiss it as soon as they're elected because they know they don't have a case, but they use it. So I hope that you're empowering people to take advantage of election years to actually draw attention to these folks.
Right. So in this case, these judges are appointed. She did this back in December of last year, so it was 23. And it is true that she may have future political aspirations, and this could certainly hurt. And I have to be careful in how I say this because we are a nonpartisan nonprofit. We do not get involved in elections. But I will say this: what we have found is that for government officials, they do, whether it's a politician, a judge, a prosecutor, a cop, or chief of police, an investigator, CPS worker, child abuse physician, everyone tends to do what is the most expedient for them. That's just human nature. We tend to do what's most expedient. Typically, what's most expedient for them is to just railroad these families and pass it on to the next person to continue doing the railroading. When we get involved and they're suddenly, their email inboxes are full every single day of people saying, do the right thing, do the right thing. We're watching you, do the right thing. Their phone voicemail boxes are filled with people saying, we know what you're doing, stop doing it, do the right thing. Their mentions on social media are filled with people saying, do the right thing, do the right thing. They end up usually doing the right thing. Like I said, we have about a 90% success rate. And
that's incredible.
And we have that because the natural inclination of people, when everyone is telling them, we know what you're doing, you know it's wrong, just like we know it's wrong, stop doing it, and there's enough people doing it, the pressure of that typically gets people to do the right thing.
Yeah,
that's why
we
we have a shirt that you can buy at our shop at youarethepower.net that says cyberbully the government. And I'm a very strong believer that you can go, and you don't even have to be mean. Like, we don't tell people to go and call them names or anything else. Just let them know we are watching you. We know what you are doing. Stop doing it. You would never do this to someone you cared about. Do the right thing here. And most of the time it works.
Well, Mally's wondering when did they start doing this? And I think this has been going on probably a while.
When did the judges start? Or?
When did the law start to pay them to do this?
I believe Title 4D of the Social Security Act first started in the 70s or 80s, but this has been something that has been building over time.
Yeah.
Similar
and
to
they keep amending it.
Well, what happens is, the system keeps getting built around that federal money. And it's also like habitual line stepping. It's like, okay, can we do this? Oh, everyone was okay with us doing that. Okay, well, we'll do this now. Everyone's all right. Okay, well, we'll do this now. And they just it's that frog in the boiling water thing. They keep pushing forward, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And now we've gotten to the point where a significant number of parents across the country who have children with chronic health issues probably shouldn't take their kids to a children's hospital or a major medical center, because there's a strong likelihood that their kids will be stolen from them because of the incentive structures.
And you go in there, kid breaks an arm riding their bicycle.
Oh, and that as well. Yeah.
And then
the
so
kid
now
can tell them they broke his arm riding a bicycle.
Now you've got to go through that. No, what O'Malley May's asking is, when did you start You Are the Power? You explained it in the beginning of the show.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we started as a proof of concept, because I'm a proof of concept guy. Like I said, I come from the startup world. I've heard a lot of really great business ideas, and I've said, let me know when this works as a proof of concept. And it more often than not, it doesn't. And so I thought, coming out of the campaign in 2020, I thought, you got people in need, you got people that want to help them. Let's put them together. Let's do something. And so, but before I was going to file for the 501 nonprofit status, before I was going to start asking people to give us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in donations and things like that. Before I was going to create this whole thing, I wanted to make sure we had any reason to think that it would work. And so we took on just under a dozen causes in 2021, test causes that we already had people there that could help us with it in place, and said, let's see if this works. Like, before I start asking for all this buy-in, let's see if it works. And it worked amazingly. So in 2022, we officially launched You Are the Power, and we have been doing this for right around 2 years now. And it has been incredible to watch how quickly it has expanded, because in the market, if you will, there is this tremendous demand for people to get help. There's two strings of demand. There's a heavy demand for people who are having these terrible things happening to them and need help to get their word out so that people will help them. And then you've got all these people that would love nothing more than to help people that are in need, especially if all they have to do is send out a couple of emails, do a couple mentions on social media. They spend, a half hour helping us do this thing and maybe donating a few bucks to the cause. And so we've kind of met those two. It turns out those demands meet each other. Those supplies meet each other's demands. And it has been incredible to watch how this has taken off.
That's awesome. I think what you're doing, dare I say, is the Lord's work. I may not be a religious man, but I can recognize the Lord's work when it happens.
I think that it's frightening, and every parent should take note. And with it being so flippant now, it's going to be a police officer's kid one day. It's going to be a politician's kid one day. And until it is, it's not going to stop, or until every community decides we're done with this, and the message gets spread like wildfire. And in small towns, it's super loud when a message starts going out there. I mean, when I watched that show, I first of all couldn't believe the government could do this, and I'm never surprised anymore. But if they can take your life savings because you drove across state lines with it to go buy a home with cash and not return it, and bankrupt you fighting for it, then what's to stop them from taking your child? And I know people who have worked at DCFS, and I know it burns them out really, really fast. And they do see the worst of the worst. But at the same time, I also know people who work at the DMV who get pretty used to their jobs, and they're bureaucrats. They can't lose them, and don't work too fast. You're going to make the rest of us look bad. You walk along to get along. You are a collective under the government. You really are. You're a group. You're a statistic, and you become a hazard. You literally become a problem until it's you. When it's your child, oh man, well, things change. But I don't know. I mean, this story just blew my mind how hard these parents had to fight. And for one mother to just say, I can't live this way, and to die. And then her child comes home and she's not there, and she doesn't get to see the fight finished. And the lawyers were just flabbergasted. Yeah, they broke her. And like you said, that's the whole point. And it doesn't care what color you are. It doesn't care what city you live in. And this is a problem. It's a problem in Europe as well, especially in England. We've seen this with babies where our side is trying to fight for them to come get health care here. No, it's not viable. You can't help them. I know Glenn Beck has taken on a couple of causes with babies where the hospital's like, sorry, we're keeping them and we're going to let them die here.
Yeah. Samuel Adams, after the Constitution was ratified, said that was it Samuel Adams? One of the founders, who I believe was Samuel Adams, said that without constant vigilance, the affirmations of our rights here that are written on this Constitution will be nothing more than mere demarcations on paper. It will mean nothing. It will be, or on parchment. It will be words on parchment that will be routinely and completely ignored by powerful people who have every incentive to ignore them.
And how correct he was.
And that's literally what we have. And so I was obviously paraphrasing a little there, but he said they would be nothing more than demarcations on parchment. It would mean nothing. And what we are trying to do with You Are the Power is say, okay, you have this government, which you claim is supposed to exist to affirm and protect our rights. We all inside of us have this intrinsic understanding that we should be respecting each other as individual human beings. and we have, for whatever reason, decided to set that aside for the government, fine. If you want to have this situation in place, you're not going to treat us this way. And we are going to organize that public to keep constant vigilance on you and to hold you accountable for it. And to demand that you treat us and the people that you're harming with the respect that you should have always treated them with. We shouldn't have to do this, but here we are doing it, and we will do it. And that's what we do at You Are the Power. And, you know,
And
if
you
people
do it
wish to
with-
join us in that, then, you know, they can go to youarethepower.net. But that is the long and short of what we do. We find
what
people
you're
that are being
doing-
disrespected, and we fight for them to get that respect they deserve.
You're fighting though in a nonviolent way, and you're you're using the game against itself. So if they're bogging you down with legal issues, then you're fighting them in the courts. If they're boggled down with health issues, you're fighting them with doctors. This is the way you can actually cause change. You're not burning your city to the ground in protest.
No.
You're doing it with a way where, you know what? You do it, or we're going to just make your life hell. I mean, the left has been doing that forever, and individuals can move mountains. I truly believe that one person can make an amazing difference in the world. And we've seen ridiculously that repeated over and over and over. And yet the government does not want you standing up for yourself, because I love the meme that everybody's hunched over on their back and there's a Monopoly game on their backs and all these fat cats are around the game. And the bottom of the meme says, the game ends when you decide to stand up.
Yep.
And that is so true. When the people decide to stand up and you know what, we're done. You don't have a moral people and a working constitution, and immoral people and a working constitution. You've got to have people value the sanctity of their life, of their freedom and their liberty, their property, their children, and that constitution is on their side. Nobody is. Patriot Act needs to go. That, as far as I'm concerned, it needs to go. And that was a Republican who did that. And I know you want him to speak at the Republican convention, but he's nonpartisan. And I mean, I think you could speak at both conventions actually.
I speak at political conventions routinely. There's nothing that says I can't speak to people of different parties. I just make it clear when I'm speaking for You Are the Power, I am speaking, I don't care who people vote for. And frankly, I don't care, even as hyper-partisan libertarian Spike Cohen, who, I'll cover this up for a second, who is, very heavily involved in trying to spread the Libertarian Party and get our candidates elected. I don't care how you vote. What I care about is what you are voting for. And so if you're in the Republican Party, and I'm now, again, speaking, I'm not speaking, just ignore this for it. But I don't care who you vote for. If you're in the Republican Party, push the Republican Party to be more libertarian and less authoritarian. If you're a Democrat and you are, that's the only, because I've met people who are libertarian who go, the Democrats party is the only party that has anything going on here. Okay, great. Then try to push them in a more civil libertarian direction if you can. If you don't want to be involved in politics at all, you can join us and just be on the side of getting the public, holding these government officials accountable. There are many people I've met who have given up on the whole thing and they're engaging in what they call agorism, which is coming up with alternatives to the services that the government provides us. That's where Bitcoin came from. They saw that fiat currency was failing us, and they said, well, we'll make new money. And so, there are many different ways that there are many different ways that we can fight for liberty. And it's going to be a lot about, what you can bring to the table, your connections that you have, what speaks to you, what actually drives you, where your talents are. There are many factors that will decide where you are best in the liberty movement. I have found that where I am best is in tying our movement to an intrinsic thing that we understand even before we can formulate words, which is that we should be respecting each other as individual human beings, and then finding people who are not being respected in that way and organizing the rest of us to fight for them to get that respect and driving home that message over and over again. We are helping people now. We are getting people involved in being activists and feeling like this is why it's called You Are the Power. You have the power to solve this. And we are showing them that at its core, whoever you're voting for, whoever's in office, doesn't actually really matter. If they are respecting you as an individual human being, things are going to be better. And if they are disrespecting you and not treating you like an individual human being, things are going to be worse.
I love it. Real world application.
Well,
Yep,
the government
100%.
always, I mean, we don't even think of the government as individuals. We think of it as the government. And
The
yet
government,
they are constantly taking our liberties, and it is death by 1,000 cuts. You'll wake up tomorrow and you are the victim. And so I love what the work that you're doing. And how do people submit a case to you? Do they just email you on the site?
Yeah, so you can do two things. We encourage you to become a member, but you actually, if you want to submit something, you technically don't have to be a member. If you go to youarethepower.net, there's a contact form. You go to contact, I think it's contact us, and like on the menu, and there's a contact form there. You can send the information there. When we follow up with you, we will need more information because, like I said, we thoroughly vet our causes. We do not want to even inadvertently take on a cause that is not legit. Yeah, right there at the top there where it says contact. On the menu, you can contact us there. You can also become a member, and when you become a member, you will get an email from us reaching out to you to thank you, and you can respond to us there with your causes. And the email address is info@youarethepower.net. But the easiest way is just to go to the website and press contact and fill out the form. It goes to that address. And as soon as we get that, it goes to our team who does all of the vetting. We may follow up with you for more information if we need it, which we almost certainly will. We will go through the process of vetting that with you and with the principals involved, the people that are involved in it. If it's a cause that we take on, the first thing that we've started doing is reaching out to those officials first to let them know that we found out about this and asking them to do the right thing before we blow it up on social media. And then if that doesn't work, then we pretty quickly after that, we activate our membership behind it. We get our regional organizers and state organizers in that region and in that state involved, and we go to work.
How many members do you have?
Over 3,000.
So do you have any paid employees for somebody looking for a job, like specialists, or do you pay specialists for consults and things like that? Or is it all charity based?
We do have a paid staff. They're the bulk of the people who do the vetting. We do have volunteers that help them. We also have volunteer organizers that are volunteers. The bulk of our work is done by volunteers, but the vetting work, the bulk of that is done by people who are actually part of a paid staff, because frankly, we're not paying them anywhere near enough of what it is to go through, to spend the hours and hours doing this, and to hear some of the most horrific, heartbreaking things that you can hear. And so we do have that. And the bottom line, right now, we're not actively hiring anyone, but with the more resources we get, the more we can expand and be able to hire more people on to vet more causes, take on more causes at the same time, and help people even faster.
Well, here's my honest opinion is I want to see you guys put out of work.
Oh, 100%.
That's what I want to see. I want to see the government
have to exist. Yeah.
I want to see the government all of a sudden become honest, and then you guys go, oh shucks, kick a rock, and then go figure something else out to do.
You know what?
I'd like to go back to retirement. Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. David says make a movie about it like Tim Ballard did. And
we've actually had people reach out to make a documentary style movie. Yeah.
No, I want to make a full blockbuster. So who's the actor you're going to have play you, or actress? I mean, it is Hollywood nowadays. We need to have representation.
Oh yeah, well then
let's lean into
Natalie
this.
Portman, clearly.
Natalie Portman.
No,
I like it. No, that's
actress.
a good one. That's a good or actor. You know, The Rock, huh?
Yes, The Rock is both in terms of my energy and my physical size.
Yes,
he's about 5'9", 175, right?
Yeah.
You know what? You say you have 3,000 members, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but I bet to those families you helped, that's millions, because this is their child. I can't stress that enough. I cannot imagine fighting an entity for my child and having nobody on that side of me to help me. And the people that can help, it's easier for them to throw money because they can't throw time. And yet these families that you guys have helped, I bet they are just ecstatic that they weren't alone. I mean, that's huge. I think at least go there, go to the site, become a member, and just just so there's allies that they have, because the left, and I don't mean Democrat or whatever.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I mean the people that have taken this government too far, and the people, and that's on both sides, but the people whose mindset is that bigger government and all of that, those people have been growing advocates or activists from this high. It's by design. They've turned activists. Our kids are activists, and let's put them in a direction where they're superheroes. They're not blowing up businesses and fighting in the streets and attacking police officers. They're superheroes. They're showing up with class and facts and strength, and they're putting the message out there, but they're doing so in a safe way, and they're building their community up. They're not tearing it down. And I love it.
We say every time when we do a rally or any kind of in-person event, I say, we want to make sure that the public officials are on notice that we're watching them. We want the public, anyone that we interact with, to be glad that we are there. Maybe
and
not the public officials, but
feel
short
respected.
Feel respected and see that and feel educated by what we're telling them about. And we want to leave wherever we went cleaner than when we left, than when we got there. The problem that I think the liberty, and this is the liberty movement writ large, not just parties or anything else. The problem philosophically with the libertarian movement, or the liberty movement, I will say, is that we just want to be left alone. And the problem is that when it comes to political organizing, a group of people who want to be left alone are always at a immediate built-in disadvantage to people who want to use and exploit power to win. And
independently minded people don't group well.
And that's the problem. So what we're doing is trying to give people a level of whatever level of buy-in they're ready to give. Because we have people that are ready to go in full bore, whole hog. They become Blaze members. They're, given every month. They're, getting involved in every single cause. And we have other people go, yeah, I'll help share stuff here and there. I don't want to give you any money and whatever. We give whatever level of buy-in someone is willing to give. And we're happy to get any bit of help that anyone can give. And what we're also doing is showing we can actually win, but it is going to require us to work together. We are going to have to do that thing that we don't necessarily like to do, which is organizing on political stuff. And not political meaning like electoral politics or campaigns or political parties, but political, the Latin pol meaning people work. Doing the
real
people
politics.
Work. The root of politic, which is people work, like working to organize people around a cause and win on it. And that's what I'm conditioning the public to be more involved in these causes, but I'm also conditioning people that think like us, that more libertarian minded people. We're going to work together and look at the successes we're getting from working together. I'm not going to burn you out on a campaign for president every 4 years and then not talk to you for the next 3 years and then come back 4 years later and say, let's run for president again and get 2%. I'm giving you things that we can win on day after day after day after day after day, and we can do it. And you can see the immediate results of the families that are being reunited, the people whose small businesses aren't being stolen from them, the people whose homes aren't being stolen, their children aren't being stolen, they're not being wrongfully arrested, they're not being threatened with arrest for helping people, they're being respected like individual human beings, which is what we always just wanted.
Have you been able to reach out to any of the J6ers?
I actually just spoke with Steve Baker, who was one of the main journalists who he was covering the January 6th protests. He went in and came out, and he also has been covering the trials and just the absolute horrific abuses they've been doing, straight up lying and perjuring in court.
Network, he works on the Blaze. Yeah,
he does now.
I've seen so many interviews.
At the time he was an independent journalist. He now works for the Blaze. I actually wrote an op-ed about Steve Baker on Blaze Media. They called it persecution or prosecution or persecution. The case of Steve Baker. I liked my title better, but I guess it wasn't, the editors didn't like it. It was sacrificed on an altar of lies, but maybe that's
well, so you have turned op-eds into the Blaze. Have you talked to Glenn Beck about your cause?
I have not had a chance to make that connection, but I would absolutely love to talk with him about it.
Wow.
I love it. And I would consider a success in on the ground actually changing people's lives would be a bigger success than a political win.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I don't vote anyway.
That's why in my running, when I ran for vice president, first of all, I didn't think I was going to get the nomination, but once I had the nomination, thank you. I only see Facebook user. Whoever said sacrifice
That's
on altar of
Mally.
lives is way. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's
Yeah.
very affirming. Thank you. What's her name?
O'Malley May.
Oh,
She's
thank you very
awesome.
much.
Her name's Mallory, but she goes by O'Malley May on Facebook.
Thank you,
O'Malley
Mallory / O'Malley May. When I ran for vice president, I knew we weren't going to win. I ran like we were running to win. I mean, I was doing.
Yeah, you ran hard. You were on the road.
I was doing like 21-hour days, man. Like
and
I
it's
was
good your wife went with you. I mean, I imagine that was hard on her too.
She went for a lot of it, and she was a real trooper. But when I did that, I knew we weren't going to win. But what I wanted to do was spread the liberty message. But what I really want to do is help people. I want people to be helped by a message of freedom, because I know that when we operate under more freedom, the more freedom we have, the better our lives are. The more we're respected as individual human beings, the better things are. And so at its core, I want to help people. So if someone comes up to me and says, help, I need help right now, and I go, I can't help you. I got to go run for this office so I can get people to hear the liberty message, so that they can understand that freedom is a good thing, so that we can get more freedom in our lives, so that I can help you.
If I win, it all gets fixed. Yeah.
Yeah. If I win it all, or even just if I get 5%, then we get ballot access, which means then we do blah, 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 and then eventually one day we'll be able to help you. And I'm losing the forest for the trees there. So
Not to mention running for an office like that is really hard on your body. I mean, for somebody that's got an MS diagnosis, stress is the worst thing. And being on your feet all the time. I mean, that running for office is no joke. And vice president of a country, you go big or go home, obviously. Obviously.
So I mean, right now, it's kind of been proven our vice president.
By example is pretty exceptional, because that's how you help people.
Well, and that's the thing is I want to help. I realized that was good and had its use. And frankly, I mean, the media connections I have, the reach I have, that helped that. So that was certainly a necessary thing as part of that. But what I've done is I flipped everything around. I now start with helping people. And then I get people to join me in helping those people. And then I get them to join me in continuing to help people. And then while they're doing that, I continue to show them a consistent libertarian message of, you need to be respected. Everyone needs to be respected. Individual human beings. And then from there, we can build the movement. I think for so long we've been saying we need to build up this movement and then we can help people. No, we need to help people, get people to join us, and then make a movement out of that.
And then those people actually put themselves in the races. I'm going to run for this seat because I believe in this message and this cause. But you have actually created popularity to where enough people are like, nope, I want a candidate like that. And I want a candidate that believes this and is actually living by example. I love it. I mean, this is how actual movements organically work, right? And you don't.
It starts at the bottom up. Yeah.
And they're the most sincere. I mean, they're the most sincere.
This is how movements that achieve their goal actually work.
And sometimes
movements that start at the top, we could name a few. I mean, Black Lives Matter, any of those.
Antifa.
All they did, well, and there's Republican ones as well. All they do is keep going to keep supporting the money they got to stay on top.
Yeah.
But a movement that works, that starts at the bottom, I think those are the success ones.
Well, it makes all the individuals that you're talking about that do have to become a group. You're empowering each one, and it's not about the group. It's about the importance and value and respect of each individual. And together, when they recognize that in each other, it's not like, hey, like Antifa, for example, we'll cover our faces and we won't let people speak at these things and we'll bully and scare them. Well, when BLM came to our county, and I'm taking us into a new segue here, but the gun-loving people that are living in our county, they all showed up with respect and their firearms and stood in front of businesses and said, welcome, BLM, behave yourselves, because they respected themselves, they respected their homes, they respected business. And it was so organic, but man, we didn't have one fight. We didn't have one business burned or.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing when people respect themselves and they expect their neighbor to respect themselves as well. And respect is earned.
Well, the BLM, it was just a protest. I don't know if it was BLM endorsed, but I spoke with the girl that kind of headed it afterwards, and she was a respected BLM, but she wasn't a member of it. But she felt offended that a lot of people showed up at our Liberty Park here. It has a statue of a Vietnam vet in it. And some veterans showed up and stood around the park like, you're not touching our statue, because they had it in their minds that that's what BLM did, is they showed up and broke stuff. And BLM and the media gave them that outlook, because that's what we saw a lot around. Yeah, and so she was offended that the people she felt like her city didn't love her anymore. So she felt abused. But the people, especially these vets that went out and gathered the money to put this statue up
for years
in a privately owned park. It wasn't, this was a privately owned park, a privately owned statue. And so they stood around and defended it, but they didn't want what they perceived that BLM did. And I do want to say that there's a perception loss on both sides of this.
Yeah,
that's the media will show you what they want you to see.
Well, and I'll tell you, during 2020, I actually went to two BLM protests. To a rally and a protest. The first one was just one that was up the road. It was right after I got the nomination. I didn't even tell anyone I was going. I just went there to observe and see what was happening. And I saw a bunch of people complaining about how they were being treated by police in Myrtle Beach. And I didn't hear anything about all white people are racist or we're going to burn things down or anything. They were literally just there complaining about like the things that they had dealt with in Myrtle Beach. One of the people that spoke was a attorney named Johnny McCoy, who represented a man who was no-knock raided over a nickel bag of weed, and they tried to kill him and then tried to frame him when he didn't die. And it blew up in his face. Long story short, he got a $40 million settlement out of it that the Myrtle Beach taxpayers had to pay for. Mm. And he talked about what he has experienced with Myrtle Beach police. And so I walked away from that going, well, that seemed fairly organic, and they were issues oriented. And certainly I'm against qualified immunity and I'm against police brutality. And I thought, okay, that's very interesting. And then I watched as what started, I think, in many cases as an intentional movement to hold bad actors in the police accountable. It turned into a grift by Act Blue to funnel money into Democrat-leaning and left-leaning causes and enrich a handful of people so that they could buy mansions. And that's when you saw it shift from people who showed up with issues-based activism to literal riots in the streets, because that's what gets the most media attention, gets you the big bucks to come out and talk about it. I went to a rally that was actually co-hosted by a libertarian-leaning Black Lives Matter chapter in Virginia and the local Black Panthers and me, the white guy standing in front of them. And we had a protest. They were protesting the new law that had passed in Virginia that criminalized carrying firearms on government property, even though their constitution forbids any prohibitions on exactly that. Like, it literally says they can't do that.
Right.
And so we were at I'm here surrounded by a bunch of armed men, armed Black men and women, and I give my speech about gun rights and about the necessity to be able to defend ourselves against all harm, no matter who it comes from, and how we are the militia and so forth. And we were talking, I mentioned police brutality, and I said, and recently in that same town in Richmond, Virginia, in the capital, they had a protest that ended in some very brutal kettling by the police, tear gas and all sorts of other stuff. That was an unarmed protest. And then so I'm there and I'm surrounded by a bunch of people with rifles and pistols and everything else.
Can I stop you? Is this before or after the protest in Virginia where the girl was hit and killed by a car and Antifa and Black Lives Matter was there?
Should have been after.
Many years later. So that was in 2017, the Charlottesville protest.
Yeah,
that was years before. This was in 2020. And and so I'm talking about police brutality, and I said, matter of fact, I don't even see any police here. There's like about 100 of us with, almost all of us are armed. I didn't have anything on me, but most of us are armed with weapons, and we're standing in between the State House and the Supreme Court, the State Superior Court, and there's no cops here. And so after the rally was over, we started looking around trying to spot the nearest police officer, and we found all the way down at the bottom of the hill, about 4 blocks down, there were a couple cops there just looking, just make sure everything was okay. And I said, this is the difference between an armed people and an unarmed people.
That's why Mao took the guns.
No one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
Nope. That's why Mao took him. Mao would not have had the great leap forward had he not disarmed the populace.
That is
power is at the barrel of a gun.
Tyranny playbook.
Yeah.
You know how to be a tyrant is you have to disarm the people.
And now that we've segued into it hard.
Oh my gosh! And you've said the word hog like 3 times.
I know.
And did you write our book?
Whole hog, and I'm
whole hog, and I'm like, I can't. Okay, can I just
hog.
share my bias? I follow this kid on Twitter, and I feel like I get dumber every time I read one of his posts. I feel like this is just a kid who got his 15 minutes of fame, and he doesn't even know. I mean, you're debating him, correct?
Yes. So I am on April 10th. I'm going to Dartmouth University, where I will be engaging in a structured debate, not just us, talking back and forth, but like an actual, each.
Who's hosting it?
It's hosted by the Dartmouth Political Union. The students there are hosting it.
What are you going to do? Did you see what just happened with Kyle Rittenhouse and how all the people?
Oh, in Memphis?
Yeah.
We'll see. They might, we might get a angry mob there with me. I don't know, but I will go there and see what happens. But I'm doing a debate with David Hogg about the issue of gun rights versus gun control. And it's going to be a I'm very much looking forward to it. The thing is, a lot of people they'll say with David Hogg, they'll say, oh, well, he's just a kid and he's not very smart. Whatever you think about him, he is one of the figureheads of one of the largest and most well-known gun control movements in the country, March for Our Lives. And he now is involved with, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but he's involved with now a left-leaning PAC that helps support liberal or progressive candidates. So, I mean,
which is probably
who better to have this debate
too.
with?
Yeah, no, I think it's I think it's excellent. It's a hard part. The crazy thing about the gun debate is I feel like the sides are drawn. The people who are anti-gun are already carry no knowledge about firearms
at all. Yeah.
And they're committed into that space. So you have to bring them into knowledge of something they despise. How do you do that? And the people who are pro-gun, even if they're pro-gun with restrictions, it goes by variability of knowledge. I think the more knowledge you have of firearms and how they operate and how they function and safe use, the further into I want as many responsible people armed on every street in the U.S. as I can get. And the further away from that you get, I want more control. I want no guns in the country at all. I want the gun to not have been invented. I want to go back and have the Mongols still ruling China.
Weapon of war.
Whichever way you go. And it's on that knowledge basis. Yeah. And I'm wondering, I like with what you do with You Are the Power, I'm a major gun advocate. I would love to find a way to do on the ground work to educate people. So I do pistol instruction. I've offered to anyone who comes at me with the gun should be controlled. I'm like, you want to go to the range? Come to the range. I'll provide the
Just help me.
Guns and ammo. I will teach you how to use it. I'll show you the proper use, all of that, whatever. And that's where, so it's almost like both sides are arguing into a vacuum.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of yelling past each other. And what I'm trying to do, what I want to do with this debate, besides just completely debunk and derail.
Well, you're going to make him, I mean, he's going to look stupid except to his believers.
I don't want to try to do that, though. I mean, if I've done my job right, then I've thoroughly debunked gun control while also making it very clear that I recognize that David Hogg didn't wake up one day and say, I want to control everyone and make the government strong and make everyone else. He thinks what he's doing is going to reduce the amount of murder and violence that's happening in this world.
What was the school he was at?
Wrong. The one in Florida, Parkland, Florida.
Parkland.
I'm forgetting the name of the school, but it was the one in Parkland.
But you know
Florida.
what you're saying, and this is something that my daughter's in debate right now, and she had a debate, and I said to her, listen, when you are debating someone and you do it with respect, it's like you just said about this whole movement you're making. You treat them with respect. They may come at you with name calling or whatever, but the second they do, they've lost the argument.
They've lost
because the people are watching, the people are observing, and people will shut off the name calling and all that. They're like, no, I'm done. The person who stands on their topic with facts and with passion and with respect is usually the person that gets the winning argument. And it's natural as humans. We want to trust the argument. If you can stand up for it and you can do so by respecting him, you're leading by example. And who knows, you may change his mind. And I want to say this, there's a funny meme. You say you're a meme guy, but did you see the meme when Obama, first president to sell out, the AR-15, sold more guns than anyone in history.
Oh yeah, greatest gun salesman ever. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's David Hogg, and he's like, "Hold my beer."
Yeah.
And that same thing. But I don't ever want to discount, the children, because he grew up. He's a man, and he may not know, the powers that be that are pushing him forward, or the people funding him, or the groups that are probably making money off of him. He may not really understand it all, but what you do know is he believes in it. That I don't question.
100%. Yeah. And the point is, maybe I'll plant some seeds and he'll be more agreeable to understanding where we come from on this. Interestingly enough, he's actually, he claims he's not fully anti-gun, even though March for Our Lives pushes for things like mandatory gun buybacks and things like that. He actually has been involved in shooting clubs. There's a lot more nuance to David Hogg than I think a lot of people realize. It's a very interesting thing. But
people have challenged him before and said, "Have you ever shot a gun?" And I saw before, he's like, "I'm willing to go. It's not going to change my mind." But I think it actually did.
Well, he went through.
It may have, because he actually does do some shooting. Yeah.
He went through a traumatic experience. Now, a lot of people say, "Well, he wasn't even there that day," but even a shooting at your school would be traumatic. Just to know that happened in your school, that dirtbag walked through the school injuring people.
You go through as well. Yeah. He could have been there. Yeah.
The whole town was affected.
And a lot of
just the kids. Like that was a really traumatic experience.
A lot of, and a lot of kids actually went anti-gun after that. He's the one that he's very articulate, and he's not dumb. So he's the one that was able to kind of carry it further. He kind of became
he was right place, right time too.
Poster boy for it.
Right place, right time. Yeah. Or wrong place, right time, or whatever. But he was there. He saw what he believes is a need for something, and he pushed forward. I respect that part of it. Obviously what he's pushing for makes things worse. And that's what I'm going to talk about, is that your desire for something to work does not mean it works. And if presented with evidence that, for example, relying on no gun zones leads to more mass shootings, because nearly every mass shooting that's ever happened has happened on a so-called no gun zone, then we need to abandon no gun zones. We need to say instead, the schools that have signs saying staff are armed and ready to defend their children are not getting the shootings. It's the ones that say, no guns allowed. They might as well put another sign here that says no mass shootings allowed. It is going to be just as effective, because if you've decided you want a massive body count and you don't care if you die, you also don't care if you violated a bylaw that says that you can't carry a gun on campus. And that every reasonable and law-abiding person there probably isn't armed. And it's a fish in a barrel zone.
Can I give a second to call out the great state of Utah? I'm about to have Texas eat its heart. The great state of Utah is there's only one school in the state of Utah you can't carry a gun. And that's BYU.
Well, they're private.
Yep.
So all the state funded
Utah,
schools.
you are allowed
right.
to.
Yep.
You know, I don't know how much fun the principals of my nieces and nephews are going to like hearing this today, but every time I go watch a sporting event where one of my nieces or nephews are involved, I have a sidearm on me, and you are allowed to in the great state of Utah. So right now, that sound you hear is Texas eating its heart out.
Well,
we had
South Carolina recently passed, and it took decades. We had the worst gun laws in the Southeast, and it wasn't even close. We had the worst, most restrictive, hardest to get a like just terrible, terrible. We now have constitutional carry, open or concealed, without a permit. There are a couple weird things in the law that we hope we can get rid of over time. Like they still have voluntary permits you can get, which are free. That's fine. But then they say if you commit a crime and don't have a permit, you get punished harder than if you have a permit. But you don't need a permit to own the firearm. So basically it's like a crime permit. It's like I'm about to commit a crime, but I don't want to get as much punishment, so I'm going to get this permit first, which means the police are going to be profiling anyone that gets a permit because you don't need it. And the only reason you would get less punishment in court. So that's kind of
it's a weird like an thing. Armed burglary registry.
It's the weirdest, like it's just a weird thing. But so there's that, and then there's a couple little odd things that are just kind of dumb. But for the most part, so we now have like a really based gun law situation here. That's where
awesome.
open and concealed carry without a permit.
We have constitutional carry too, and that's actually pretty new under our governor when he was first elected. You know, the one thing you have
he didn't want to do it. Our state
the one
reps
argument that I think is important is, again, we go back to history. You have history on your side, and we need to count on the fact that David Hogg understands history and what unarming people or restricting people does and can do to their lives. Because you may not want to own a firearm, but if it hits the fan, you want your neighbor to have one. You want your neighbor to protect you and your family. You still value that what it is a tool. This is a tool that can be the one thing that keeps you from having an invasion in your country, or an invasion in your home, or your body being violated in a dark parking lot. I mean, this is a tool that levels the playing field, and you have history on your side, and you have statistics on your side. And I mean, I am excited. I can't wait. I think we should have a watch party. How do we host a watch party? Do we just do it on our page and tune in, or?
Yeah, you absolutely can. So if you go to spikecohen.com/gun debate, that's the site that's up right now. Once they're going to have a scheduled, like an already pre-scheduled stream that you can follow, so that when it goes live, we will have that once it's available. If you want to register to attend, unfortunately, we sold out within a day of me putting it up. So I think it's going to be a bunch supporters there, but awesome. But we will have that stream there. I know the Libertarian Party of Utah, they're having a watch party. We're encouraging people to do watch parties. Like, the stream will be free and available, live stream on their YouTube channel, on the Dartmouth Political Union channel there. And we will have the stream once it's available for people to, because when you can pre-schedule when you're doing like a YouTube stream, you can pre-schedule it. And so that people can go to that link and they can press the button to notify them when it's about to go live and all of that. So we're going to do that. But yeah, if you want to set up a watch party, please do. Like, I want to have as many eyes on this as possible. I want people to see that, that we can dismantle the gun argument and the gun control argument on their terms, because my main focus on this, I'm going to talk about natural rights and the Constitution and the militia and fighting against tyranny. My main focus is going to be on what their concern is, which is public safety, reduction of murders and violence, and general feeling of safety in your community. And I'm going to explain how we have the data that shows in detail that when you restrict peaceful and law-abiding people from owning firearms, you do two things. You turn a bunch of peaceful people into criminals,
Yes.
and you make it so that only the violent criminals and the government have guns. Well, those are the people most likely to use them against you. So
and look at Chicago, look at DC, look at the New Orleans. I mean, the most stringent gun laws in this country are the most terrifying cities to be in.
100%.
And you can't be armed and not be a criminal. You have to be a criminal if you're carrying a firearm. And that's just insane. And these inalienable rights that were given to us as protection, and no, the founders could have never known the type of firearms we would have one day. But even they fought a revolution with illegal guns, because freedom is that important.
Well, they didn't know about the internet either, but the First Amendment.
Exactly. They didn't know about a lot of things, but the thing is, these were some of the geniuses of their time. They knew that technology was going to progress. They didn't make it. They future-proofed. They even used the term arms because they wanted to make it clear it wasn't just about the type of guns of their time. Right. It was about any offensive tool, like any tool whose purpose is to fight, is to be used in fighting. And so it means everything. It means knives and everything else. And one day when we have laser weapons and everything else, it'll mean that too. And so I do believe that they future-proofed it. What sucks now, guys, is that it used to be that you could say, well, listen, if the Second Amendment doesn't apply to guns, to modern rifles, well, then the First Amendment doesn't apply to the internet. But they agree with you now. They're like, yeah, no, we should be limiting people's speech as well. It's a very dangerous assault speech. So you can't really use that with this.
I've always said to people, like in that First Amendment, I'm like, you know what? How about this? How about if you want to publish anything on the internet whatsoever, you have to get a license.
Well, they'll do it. They'll do it in a heartbeat.
That's the problem.
From the license.
They'd be okay with that.
Okay, you got to
keyboard warriors. Oh no, they're not going to.
Okay,
but if you want to be in media, you have to be licensed before
we
you
need
can
to lean
speak.
into the Third Amendment now. That's our new argument.
They're coming to your house.
They're going to live in your house. You're going to be hosting. You're going to be hosting a dirty specialist in the Army. Enjoy. That's where we got to go now, because they want to do it. Yeah. They want to do away with the first. Have you seen the study that the Ohio Attorney General had put together after Ohio went to constitutional carry?
No, but I've looked at a few different states' data, and in every state, the violent crime rates across the board have dropped significantly.
Yeah, I put it up right now. The Center for Justice Research in Ohio. This guy, he's one of my new personal heroes, but he had a study commissioned, and he had a very liberal college, do the study, and they come out with the numbers.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's just more every time you, I should say, every time you liberalize in the
traditional sense,
in the traditional vernacular, liberalize humans, allow them more individual liberty, freedoms go up and safety goes up every time.
It's about that individual spirit.
Cities are more restrictive on life.
Individual human beings,
yeah. Cities are more restrictive on life, and they're the lowest trust.
Oh, and I'm glad you brought that up. So there's been a lot of talk recently about high trust societies, and I'm glad, because we so often get caught up in like the rules. And so we'll say like, well, in this state or this city, the rules are like this, and this is what's happening as a result, or the rules in this city are this way, and this is what, and they're missing out on the fact that, like, for example, in Japan, they have very restrictive rules in many cases on weird things that we wouldn't even consider, and then no restrictions on other things that we would usually have very restricted. The Japanese culture is a high trust culture. It is one in which Japanese people recognize that, I mean, they literally will schedule international sporting events so that the Japanese team plays last, because they know the Japanese fans will come in and clean up the stadium, because it's part of their culture that, like, if you're sitting somewhere and it's dirty, you have to tidy it up and
like
clean
manners.
it up. You wouldn't.
It's discipline.
It's manners and discipline.
It's not laws. It's culture.
And when we talk about high trust, but we never say what the trust is in, I believe that trust is an unspoken trust that each individual person is being respected and held accountable as an individual human being. If you are sitting here, you are not just some political abstraction. You're a person. You're surrounded by filth. And so you should clean it up and help the other people that would also have to sit there, the other individual people who will eventually be in your situation of sitting here. And so it is so pervasive in their society that it basically becomes like an honor-based system, but it's honoring each other as individual human beings. And so I think that when we talk about high trust and low trust societies, if you boil it down, what it really is it's that people are not respecting each other in a low trust society, in a high crime society, in a unstable society.
I mean, the Communist Manifesto makes you a collective, and that means you're not worthy, you're not important, and it's by design. And that's where
you're a part in a machine.
Yeah, and that machine only works if all of us comply and all of us go down. And the government is the daddy and the master, and we're all working for that. And none of us are individuals. And
they take high personal responsibility. Also, Japan. I'm not saying anything right now. I'm just saying Japan seems to be very notorious for public officials getting killed. I wonder if that correlates.
Yeah. Well,
they just had one murdered, 2.5 years ago?
Yeah.
And they had one murdered. I mean, this is their prime minister. They had one, I want to say like 6 years before that.
We had a president killed.
But they do it all the time. They do it like every decade.
Well, eventually you turn into Russia and you just don't run against anybody. Let the guy win.
But I'm not saying that's anything. But no, they take a lot of personal responsibility. And it starts in their house and in their schools. Their elementary schools, the kids clean it. They don't hire a janitor.
Yep.
The kids clean their schools every day. Every day.
This is a society, though, where honor is everything. And this is a society where they'll have shame and they'll kill themselves because they bring shame to their family. It's horrendous.
Social shaming is how we were able to enforce the cultural mores that allowed our ancestors to survive and thrive under much worse conditions. And then at some point, we replaced that, or have been slowly replacing that, with the government. Well, two things happen there. Number one, what happens is that you now have this authoritarian daddy and nanny state telling you how to live your life. But the other thing that happens is if we've outsourced that responsibility to this central planning committee, we can act however we want to. We can
as long as you can get away with it.
As long as you can get away with it. But we now, things that aren't criminal but are ill-advised, we do it anyway. We get fat. We treat each other like crap. We don't respect our own bodies. We engage in hedonistic lifestyles. And do you have a right to do that? Absolutely. But it's ill-advised. And because it's being subsidized and underwritten when you make poor life choices that lead you not to be able to take care of yourself, and if you do something that steps out of line, they'll just punish you and throw you in jail where you absolutely have your needs taken care of, 3 hots in a cot.
True.
All personal responsibility goes away, and that individualism of individual human beings starts to erode, and then so too does the trust in that the
culture with it.
Cultural trust erode, and then everything else erodes as a result of that. So it's happening on both sides.
Your children are not getting it from school. You see the erosion in all the government entities. And so your only hope is to keep it home. But then you can't watch television or that erosion happens. If you're listening to music, erosion happens. It's like even in churches now, you see erosion because people forget that value of life. They forget the value of a culture that respects each other. They forget that. And it's all about me, me, me. They're not thinking of what comes after me and how hard you work to get what it is you're going for, because it's a personal goal and it's a cultural expectation. I mean, in Japan, that honor thing, they expect young kids to have the discipline to do hours and hours and hours of school because they have to make their family proud. But not only that, they plan to take care of their parents up until their death. They're not putting them in rest homes and all of that. It's about that culture, and it's slowly rotting. And you're seeing it, and it's rotted in America. It's rotted in Western states. It's it's all part of that. And then there's a group that seizes and jumps on, hones in on that rot.
Yeah. If you
and
do not,
we're blind to that group until it's already on top of us.
if we do not hold ourselves accountable, then the people will cry out for a strong man to do it for us. And that will be much worse for everyone. Unfortunately, I do have to start heading over to another interview, but I want to thank you guys for having me on. I'd like to thank all of you for hearing what we have to say about this. If anyone wants to be involved with helping us fight for that individual human respect and helping people who need our help now to get the respect they deserve and reunite their families and all of that, go to youarethepower.net. Right now, our biggest cause we're working on is to fight to get Governor Brian Kemp to agree to a sit down to meet with us and meet with these families and talk about what needs to change in their DFAC system. So if you go to youarethepower.net/GA for Georgia, you can go there and get all the information on how to do that. And again, thank you guys so much for having me on.
We're going to put a hot link for youarethepower.net in the show notes. Just click it. Take you right there.
Is Brian Kemp up for re-election?
He's term limited. He's term limited, but he's a father of 3. And I'd like to think that when he considers what this would have been like if when his daughters were young, that we can get him on board. So
either way, we get him on board if this is a legacy option.
We need to get the federal
legacy.
We don't want the federal government dealing with family affairs. We don't even want a state government. We want local judicial systems dealing with that. Something that really can hold it accountable if there's wrong being done, but can see what's really happening. You don't want to have miles of bureaucracy. And also, remember on the 10th, he's having the debate. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So that'll be
SpikeCohen.com/gun debate. And that has all the
there's going to be a hot link for that as well.
We'll post it.
We're going to also figure out, Jared's got to learn the internet and stuff. I'm going to try to do, so we do a live watch party. I'm really interested to watch this debate. You're going to stomp him. I'm hoping that you can get through to some of the people that are, in the gray area wondering, because I do believe, I'm with you. I think that we need to have a society of independent people to remain free.
Well, and I'm going to reach out to Glenn Beck and Pat Gray from The Blaze and see if there's any way they can at least get you on their radar.
That would be incredible. We'd love to sit down and talk with them.
I've only met them a couple of times. I'm nobody. But I think if more people do, and O'Malley May likes
Jesse
Kelly. And I don't know if you listen to Jesse Kelly, but these podcasters that have a great following, I think you're a great interview.
And
this was a lot of fun.
You also have a pod. Do you still do your podcast?
No, I don't do my podcast anymore. They keep me pretty busy with this stuff now.
That's too bad.
I really appreciate it. I would love to follow up with those. I do have to get out of here. Thank you guys.
Have a good one. Thank you.
For tuning in. I talk with you soon. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right, everyone. That was Spike Cohen. Sorry we didn't do any call-ins there. Didn't spend as much time on guns as I would have thought I would have, but we did spend a lot of time on liberty, and I love his message that liberty, to me, libertarianism is freedom through responsible actions, freedom through living responsibly, and he is doing that.